Welcome to AP Taylor Swift, the podcast for Swifties with English degrees, or those who wished they majored in English so they could prepare for the tortured poets department. I'm Jody.
I'm Jen.
And I'm Monty.
And we are your unofficial professors of Taylor Swift. And today we are coming to you with a very special bonus episode because Taylor Swift just appointed herself the chairman of the tortured poets department. Yes, she announced her 11th album is dropping on April 19th. And so this episode is coming to you really quickly. It doesn't have any of our fancy editing. Please forgive the chaos that is about to ensue. And speaking of chaos, literally as we hit record, Taylor just dropped, what is this? The back of the album and the track list?
The back cover. It says the manuscript.
I'm losing my shit.
Sideways and not very well-defined writing, and I'm old, and it's very hard for me to read this. So
I love you.
I'll do what I can.
Do we want to start with what she released yesterday, which is the front cover and the poem, and then go into this?
Yes,
sure.
My personal opinion is we should just go through what she has given us in the order she gave us. So starting with the front cover art, then the poem, and then now this, even though my mind is reeling.
Okay, let's do it. Go for it, Jen. Okay. I'm still trying to process the fact that she dropped this. I'm still trying to process the fact that we have a podcast called AP Taylor Swift, Advanced Placement. We literally do lyrical analysis and an academic view of her lyrics. And she just announced an entire album that is like our brand.
Oh my God.
I know. Okay, pause. Go ahead.
So I'm going to make the assumption that if you are listening to this, you have seen these images, because otherwise us trying to describe them will be really difficult. But my number one reaction from seeing the cover art was, this is incredibly sensual, but from a female gaze perspective. I saw people saying this is sexual, and I was like, this does not feel sexual to me. Different. Vigilante shit at the Eras Tour, sexual. This album cover, sensual. There's a difference.
Explain the difference.
To me, the difference is sort of, again, who is it for?
Okay.
Who's going to be drawn into this? Is it kind of like the male gaze? Is it kind of like, in the Vigilante shit, she's got the legs going out and the slowing down and hands running down her body. And this is very intimate. It's not explicit in any way. She's not,
it's not
her
as
legs
sexually
closed. She's actually kind of covering her body, but it's sensual in that it's on a bed. It's very intimate. It feels much more romantic than it feels let's get down to business.
Personal.
Definitely vulnerable too.
She's vulnerable,
in
intimate
bed, home setting, and the way that she's kind of facing the camera, but you don't actually see the eyes. It definitely feels like you're going to be let in on something that is very personal, but at the same time, it doesn't feel inappropriate.
No.
Yeah. But you get the ray of light coming in over her body just a little bit, so it feels kind of like morning after. Which is, you're still
daylight.
there, you're still together, there's daylight. This wasn't a one night stand. This is an ongoing thing. And the colors overall, to me, I think Monza, you might have to interpret what I'm trying to say because I don't know the design stuff nearly as well as you, but it's not black and white, but it's not sepia either. I don't quite understand the tone here, but it's very, again, early morning light is what it feels like. That
it's not super, super high contrast, but there is definitely that black and white theme, which leading up to this release too, she was teasing with all of the friends, black and white
red
pictures,
herrings.
Her clothing was black and white, and everybody thought it was Reputation. And
red herrings.
Here we have another black and white situation.
Knows what she's doing. The other thing that stood out to me with the framing of this photo, you mentioned, Jen, that her eyes are cut off, and the other album we had that in was 1989, the original, where you just saw her nose and her mouth. And I remember there was a lot of pushback against that from her record label, that she's not showing her full face. And here you have, again, she's not showing her full face, but she's at a point in her career where even if you didn't know that Taylor Swift released this album, if you just saw this picture, I mean, Taylor Swift fans would recognize that lower part of the face anywhere.
Well, and it's interesting too, like you kind of have almost like the three parts of your body, the way you interact with the world, your brain, your heart, and your gut. And to me, the
Ooh.
gut is what's centered here. That this isn't an intellectual album. I'm sure it has a lot of emotions, but it feels like
Did
it's
you
coming
just say
from the
this is
soul.
not an intellectual album? I am going to dispute that one, and I
No,
haven't even
okay.
listened to it.
I actually, every time Jody, you're like, we're an AP podcast. This is an intellectual album. She's so good at messing with us and giving us the total opposite of what you expect.
That's fair.
And so the
That's
fact
fair.
that the title is such an ode to poetry and
Academics and poetry, yeah.
even what she's releasing, I mean, she's giving us form in the writing, which we'll get to in a second, but she's giving us a lot of poetic references. It just makes me get my guard up just a little bit and be like, what if it's like totally the opposite?
Well, I think what's interesting about poetry, and keep in mind, I never studied poetry in college explicitly, and Jen, you have. So this is going to be my take on it. Like, poetry is emotional. It is deeply
True.
emotional. It is deeply spiritual. And yet we study it in school and analyze it and break it apart. I've got my Norton Anthology of Poetry here and my Dorothy Parker Complete Collections. And it's literally like totally taken apart. And I guess you could make an argument that like ruins the beauty of the poetry to like totally break it apart. But I'm not going to say that because that's literally what we do on this podcast.
Yeah, well, there's a huge difference between something being requiring some intellectualness and that like piecing together poetry, piecing together any art does take mental effort. However, like think about the songs we've talked about. We have so many songs where like, hey, this song feels like it's in the moment, it's raw emotion. And then we have songs that are like, oh, this feels like it's in retrospect. It's saying like it's the one, you know, where it's like, oh man, you could have been the one, versus like Haunted, where it's like this is gut wrenching. And just the way that her body is centered in this image centers her gut. It centers that part of her body. So yes, her brain's a part of it, her heart's a part of it, but what I'm more getting to is like it the way it's centered is like this maybe originated in the gut, that these are those raw emotions. And that's what you get with a lot of poetry too, where it's that just raw emotion that you piece together, but it's not going to be, well, I mean, who knows what it will be, but I am hypothesizing it's not going to be a highly intellectualized, like, I have thought about all of my emotions and how this is going, and like that this
not
is
an
the
anxiety.
like this is going to be like the moment you walk into therapy, not the moment you leave therapy where you're like, I'm piecing it together. It's that raw coming in of like things are happening.
Oh my god, I can't.
I think examining this initial art, sorry, I said art, but what I meant to say, like examining this cover, but also thinking of it in terms of art is definitely like a great place to start, because yes, she's giving us poetry, but the way that this photo is kind of taken, it's photography, but it feels like it's following a lot of art principles. You've got your contrast, obviously, like between the white and black. I think in art, like negative space and positive space is a really big kind of thing to pay attention to, and like the general composition of how this is, like she's just like horizontal in the center. The fact that you can't see her eyes, which are typically the most emotive part of any expression, is really interesting. It creates a sense of intrigue and mystery. Like we don't know if she's crying, we don't know if she's looking at the camera, we don't know if her eyes are closed, like we have no idea what she's about to give us. But her head is turned towards the camera, and so it really creates a sense of intrigue. And I loved the call out about the gut and the fact that her hands are almost like covering, because it makes it
Her gut
like
and her heart.
I mean, there are so many paintings of women like sprawled out on beds in art history. And a lot of times the hands are open or the hands are closed, but what the hands are doing is really important. And it's just really interesting that way that she's kind of like even posed in this photo. Really curious to see like where she goes with that.
Should we move on to the title of the album?
I can't even. I'm so excited.
I mean, first reaction to me was like definitely Dead Poet Society. That was like the first thing that I thought of.
That seems really common. Again, I'm just wildly hypothesizing, which at
Aren't
this
we
point
all?
we can. But I mean, we have evidence to back it up. It's what we
Okay.
do here. But so Dead Poets Society, good movie. I did enjoy the movie. It's a very male centric movie, as it
It
kind of has
is.
to be. Like, it's at a boys' boarding school, so like, okay, fine. Like, that's a story
Also,
you're
like, what,
telling.
1999? Wasn't everything very
Yeah.
back in the day?
But in the same way as, like, we talked about this in our eco-criticism in the lakes episode, that she took this very male-centric idea, the lakes poets, and she made it her own. That, like, the obvious call out to Dead Poets Society, like, someone would have said in the process of naming this album, like, people are going to make that association. Like, I just don't think there's any way you can name something this
Right.
and not know that that's there. So again, is this what's happening again, that we're taking a very male centric, beautiful, poetic, artistic piece of art and saying, okay, but now we're going to do it for the ladies. Like, this is mine
Hell
now. I am
yes,
going to
Taylor-
reclaim this.
Dead Poet Society, Taylor's version.
I think department is a really interesting word choice.
Yes. Say more.
There's two parts of that, though, because if you go right before it, the Tortured Poets Department, poets is plural, it's not possessive.
Right. I said that was what I
Oh, I
slapped you
love
guys
that.
last night. I was like, why is there no apostrophe?
Apostrophe.
Oh, it's not the poets department. It's the Department of Poets.
Yeah. And
What
it's
does that
also
mean?
Well, I
There's
mean, it's very
multiple.
academic. You have the English department, and you know, like in college. So that's where my brain immediately went to. Like, if you say like the poetry department, you know, like I'm going to be thinking like immediately like universities. Like that's where you have departments dedicated to this kind of thing.
But it's the poets department, not poetry.
And one thing, I know we're going in order, so we'll discuss
know,
more
it's so
later
hard.
about the other things. But I do think the interesting thing is it feels very like government organization. So not just academic, department
Of magical affairs.
like Ministry of
did think
Magic.
that.
Yeah.
I 100% thought about that.
I mean, the other images that are coming out, which we'll discuss in a second, but it's like there's a lot of like file folders and paperwork
It's
and
school.
chairman.
It's academic.
It is academic, but I think it could just as well be like an FBI like department or like
We will get there. Wait for it.
like any government agency, any government department.
Yeah,
Except
it's definitely, there's a lot of ways it could be, but like at the very least, it's definitely a massive bureaucracy. Like that
Bureaucracy is great. Bureaucratic, yeah.
You know, like it could be a school, it could be something else, but it's some sort of like big bureaucracy where you have these niche departments and you have to have all the right paperwork and the files and all of that kind of
From
stuff.
the desk of.
Right, which is
Right.
fascinating too, though, because if it's the Tortured Poets Department, like in some ways it almost feels like this kind of like weird like dark academia world fantasy building thing where it's like, yeah, it's like the Ministry of Magic, but like Taylor's creating this world where there's some sort of bureaucracy that tracks all the different types of artists, and she's
It's
going
Hogwarts
into
when
the
Dolores Umbridge takes over.
yeah, and now she's
there's
part of
all
the
of
Tortured
those
Poets Department.
Things that they put on the wall that they can't.
Yeah, the educational decrees or whatever.
Yeah, I've clearly been watching those movies again and again.
But you know, like it's interesting because if we go back on this, you know, in this fantasy world, there could be a like Department of Lovers. There could be a like the folklore and fantasy department. You know, like each era, you know, like there's some like potential world building going on here, which maybe is just me being a fantasy fan, but to create a whole department is a really interesting thing to do, particularly when she is a primarily one word album title artist.
That's good. That's a very astute observation. She does usually have one word, which is why we're all like, what are we going to call this? Poets? We're going to call this tortured?
I mean, I think that's the immediate thing that you think of because of just the structure of the title. Like for me, was definitely Dead Poet Society, but then it's like there's so many synonyms for society, and department is not actually one of them. So the fact that she went there is a very different direction. And even then, like even if we're thinking about an academic institution, I just feel like department's not like the first thing that I think of.
Oh, for me it is. I think when you put together poets and department, I'm like, oh, this is a school. This is an this is
Yeah.
this is
English
a
is always
university.
department, so that's just been my experience. It might be different depending on your major, but yeah, for me it's always been like, oh, the English department or whatever. Yeah. It's only been the English department for me. I don't know why.
That's the only
there
thing
were other things in my life.
History and religion department.
Yeah, to your point though, Monzi, and I'm just going to acknowledge this, like, we're rhetoric, not rumors, but there's this whole theory going on about an ex who had a tortured men's group chat or whatever, which is fine. Maybe that was part of the inspiration. I don't know. Right. Again, female reclaiming here, but where she ended up was not tortured men. It was not a group chat. It's a department.
Yeah. She took it. And for me, I go to the brand and the imagery in the world, but like marketing world and brand that this lets her create, and we get in that gives us a visual tone and a brand imagery, and it also gives us a set of artifacts that she can use, like the little emblem from the desk of, and she even has an icon which is the initials TTPD and the file folders, and her merch already we see bookmarks. Like there's
so excited for the bookmarks.
I know. We need our own bookmarks. Or maybe we need to write our book so we can put the Taylor Swift bookmark in.
Is she writing a book? Like, we're talking about world building. Like,
absolutely.
The next era, is it just chapters, different departments? Is it the whole world?
Oh my god.
What is the next era?
I don't know. Okay, rein it in. Let's rein it in.
With this discussion about branding, let's move to the next page where we have a folder and we have the poem that is handwritten on embossed paper. The embossing is really interesting. That's giving me like Ivy League University feelings. I'm just going to read it. I'm just going to read this page. I know we've all seen it, but it's quick. Let's just do it. And so I enter into evidence. My tarnished coat of arms, my muses, acquired like bruises, my talismans and charms, the tick, tick, tick of love bombs, my veins of pitch black ink. All's fair in love and poetry. Sincerely, the chairman of the Tortured Poets Department. Let's just start at the top.
Deceased.
Okay, so I enter into evidence. This is where it does give more government and FBI evidence.
Yes,
obviously.
This is a continuation of something. This is not the beginning. This literally starts in the middle. It is the conclusion. Yes.
Closing argument.
She's giving law. She's giving Elwoods.
Okay, I totally was going to make the Elwoods comparison.
It might be because I was just editing a different podcast where you also made an Elwoods comparison, so it is on my mind. The episode I was just editing is our poetic repetition episode, so that will be a good one. I will be referencing that here, but when that comes out in March, I have a feeling that'll help our listeners prepare for this album.
Yes.
Enter into evidence. You have the alliteration, enter into evidence. Well, that's like a soft alliteration. Is that even called alliteration?
I think it could be, because also the sounds are vowels. It's like 3 vowel sounds. I enter into evidence.
And yes, typically refers to a crime. Like there's a crime that has happened and you're entering something into evidence as a lawyer or as a police officer, And
I think, and we'll still go through this line by line, but and we'll see more of this, but pointing out that the conclusion of it's not even the conclusion, the like sign off is all's fair in love and poetry, which is obviously reference to all's fair in love and war. So the idea of a conflict is very much built in from the moment we start this to the way it ends too. So I think we'll see more of that imagery as we go through.
Do we want to start with that, or are we going to start with the top?
I think we can just keep going. I'm just kind of saying beginning and end, we're sandwiching it.
Starts with a crime.
Some sort of conflict happened here that has been considered a crime. It was the best of times, the worst of crimes.
I think the second line is really interesting. My tarnished coat of arms. Like, does she have a coat of arms? What does that mean? Like,
let's let you have it.
I'm ready for this. So, the concept of a coat of arms, genuinely, like, I was gonna say books can be written about it. I'm sure they have been. There's this huge history where like every single part of like your coat of arms has meaning. There's all these different ways you can do it. You could inherit it. You could add things to it. It was like a deeply symbolic thing, which like is like Taylor coded for sure, which is fun.
I think it was also very deeply associated with your family line
Yes,
or
it's
family.
a family's coat of arms, or I
Yes, but
believe
it
it's
kinda-
also country.
It
Or a
depends
town.
country by country. So sometimes it's very much your a lot of times it was your family. Like I think our big modern understanding of it is people doing like genealogy. They'll find their family coat of arms and use that to find things out, which is totally valid. But what it was really intended for when it first became a big thing in the Middle Ages was it was a very clear identifier, because if you died in battle, they needed to identify all of the bodies.
It's basically
because
your dog tag.
warfare was brutal. Yeah, it's your dog tag. And two things that are interesting about this. So saying my tarnished coat of arms to me says it is something that she has brought into battle over and over and over again. It is a well used battle weary item.
I also think.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, not to cut you, but the tarnish. Maybe you were about to say this too. It's not just well used tarnish. I mean, silver tarnishes. There, when you think of the actual kinds of.
Usually,
Yes,
it's on a
but
shield.
yeah, but shields can be made of like steel, lead. I don't know, like what are the
This is a
materials for
fancy
shields?
one.
Like in the
Iron.
original, there was like fur, like animal fur was part of your coat of arms
Sure,
sometimes.
but
like it
not
was a
but
lot of stuff.
I understand, but like not all of those materials tarnish. So like
Right.
when you think about like going into battle, you don't walk in with like silver. Like nobody wore silver armor.
Well,
Armor
if you're
is
Taylor
not that
Swift,
typically.
you do.
Well, this is the thing that's interesting. When you're saying the word tarnish, you're applying something that has been exposed and is like tarnish is a very specific word, and
Yes.
and that's like aged, I would say, exposed to other elements. But that's silver, and it kind of brings you to it, like leads you to think of precious metals. So something very precious. It's a precious coat of arm, but I don't know if I would necessarily say it's like armor or like a shield.
Well,
So I
another definition is make or become less valuable or respected.
Of tarnish.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's another definition of tarnish.
Yeah, like your reputation, like a tarnished
Jaded.
reputation.
Yeah, jaded.
So the other thing that I thought was interesting too, though, with coat of arms is yes, it was a very real thing in battle, but then you get into sort of like early modern, like Elizabethan era, and the coat of arms were still being used, but they were being used for the like fake battles, like jousting and more of those like royalty entertaining things. So then the coat of arms were being used as people literally risked their lives to entertain the nobility. And that to me was a much more interesting of this, like being on display, being put at risk. And so those were more decorative in a lot of ways because they were kind of for the show, for the stage, if you will, but the risk was very real. People did die in those contests.
I like Jody's alternative definition, and if you're tying coat of arms to be identity or like some like which often is the most precious thing you have, it could be compared to a precious metal. But like, let's say you're saying coat of arms means deep rooted identity, and you're saying that has been tarnished or jaded in some way, some sort of jaded reputation. I think that feels really fitting, and saying that I'm entering that into evidence, like my tarnished identity.
Yeah, and I think to me it also just like it's regardless of how it got there, it's something you bring with you into battle. It's something that's used to identify you, and whatever it is, she does not in this poem have a fresh, beautiful new identifier in battle. It is something that has seen battle, or even if we say tarnished, like it has been in battle so much, it's not even been able to be maintained. There's been no way to polish the silver of this coat of arms because it is so constantly in use. There has not been a time of peace to recover, to repair, to renew.
And so then it's like, okay, next interesting line. I mean, like literally, like this is one of those like truly like a poem. It's like deep reading, but it's my muses acquired like bruises.
Yeah.
What? We've discussed muses before
in our mastermind episode
a
20.
lot of episodes. Yeah. Inspiration, obviously, Greek reference, but acquired like bruises, like her
pain,
inspiration
physical violence
has come at the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about it. Like a lot of her songs are about heartbreak or about painful memories, right? And painful experiences.
And she is accused of writing about her exes and her relationships. Certainly everything leaves a bruise, like all those kind of experiences leave some sort of a mark on you.
Oh, I just got it. Sorry. These are like the things hello. This is real time. These are the 3 things that are going to inform the album. Okay, cool. Great. Sorry. I thought this was all talking about one thing. It's not.
No, these are the 3 things that she's entering into evidence.
Inspirations that she's entering into evidence that she's written about. Cool. See, welcome. This is how this works.
Well, that's why we have to go line by line.
Well, and
you got to read.
I analyzed the shit out of this thing and only just got that.
And she has the muse in the lakes, like take me lakes with my muse. I don't remember the full line right now, but it's interesting. We didn't talk about it then, but it's something I've thought about since as I've listened to the lakes is, again, we talk about her like female reclaiming of things. There's very much an inverse. If you say muse, you are most likely going to think that is a woman muse who is essentially serving a male artist. You think about artists like Picasso, who very much used and abused multiple female muses throughout his career, and there's a long history of that. So again, as she does all the time, it's just so interesting to me that she's flipping this. It's my muses. As a female artist, they are her muses. We don't have a ton of examples of that. And yet, in this situation, she's still the one who's getting the bruises. And it's like, no matter if you are the muse or the artist, the woman is the one who's going to be hurt. Like, it doesn't matter.
I think that's a really good point, because muses does bring to your mind the image of women. Like, historically, they've always been women.
The muses are.
And for that reason, my initial gut reaction was like, is she talking about her friends? Or like, is she talking about the girl gangs that she's always seen with? But obviously, in this case, acquired like bruises, I think it's the inspirations for her songs. And because she's so often accused of writing of her exes, like always talking about every breakup that she's ever had. I mean, in this situation, she's really flipping that. She's calling all of these men, her muses, a female term.
Speaking of a breakup, devastating song that inspired her, you know what we have here? We have 4 My's. You know where else we had 4 my.
Ooh, Death by a Thousand Cuts.
Death by a Thousand Cuts.
My.
It comes back here in this poem with 4 My's, that poetic repetition of the my at the beginning of these lines.
I think that is very astute.
Oh, thank you. I try.
And then we have
next line, my talismans and charms. We get to the magic.
This one was really interesting to me. I didn't have only thing I really immediately thought of was like the 13, the lucky number. She's definitely a pretty superstitious person.
Superstitious, things that bring good luck.
She's been accused of being like, she references witchcraft a lot and like her witch motifs. And I think this idea of sorcery. Yeah. Calculating. I mean, but also like sorcery, like the idea that she can control or manipulate people. And so the idea that she has these talismans or charms. Her lucky,
fascinating. These are all the
numbers,
things that are going to come up in this album. The tick, tick, tick of love bombs. I have our musical reference for the day. Tick, tick, boom.
I was so prepared for you to say that, but I was going to say it if you didn't.
Because you know me well. Musical was by Jonathan Larson, who created Rent, and the most recent movie of it, or the only movie of it, was directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda, starring Andrew Garfield. And there's our Lin-Manuel Miranda connection of the day. There's like a checklist of things we have to pretty much cover. I'm waiting for where Enchanted falls in here, but we'll get there, I'm sure.
You brought it up, Monty. Do you want to talk about the form of this? I'm assuming that's what you were referring to about the poetic form stuff.
Yeah, with poetry, the form that it takes, the spacing. Actually, I mean, we could have even started earlier. I was surprised that there was no comma after and so. I enter. The punctuation is something to pay attention to. She does use commas. It's after my muses, but you don't see it everywhere. She uses it sparingly. And here, she has it after tick, tick. But the way that these words are written, it's like steps. It's like staircase going down. It's it moves forward it's not like tick, tick, tick written one above the other. You're progressing, but there is a definite, it almost feels like the only thing I can think of is like the slinky that goes down the stair, right?
Yeah, it
like you're
reminded me
going
of
from
stairs
one step to the next,
till you finally get to the bottom. And
I think it's really interesting because tick associated with love bomb, but until you get there, it could have meant like a clock, like a ticking clock. I thought more of that.
It's a clock.
I
It
thought
helps you
that
tell
too.
time.
It's like until you get to the bomb, you think it's a clock, and then you get to the bomb, and you're like, oh, it's a bomb. But
It's a love bomb. Not only a bomb, it's a love bomb.
right. But we've seen clocks before in Mastermind.
Just a few. And all of it.
All of Midnight's.
The form of it too builds anticipation. Like even as I was reading it, it wasn't intentional, but I slowed down at that part. You know, it's my talismans and charms, the tick, tick, tick of love bombs. Like it forces you to slow down. It builds the anticipation, and like you said, you don't know if it's a clock or not. But then it's the anticipation of a bomb, and immediately you're thinking about like all those intense scenes where people are trying to defuse a bomb, and you know, like okay,
sorry.
Woo.
Yeah.
Different podcast.
But like it's those are the most like intense moments where you're like, I mean, on TV movies you're like they're gonna probably defuse it, like they're not gonna like just kill every main character of this TV show, but there's still this anticipation of like, is it gonna go off? Is it not gonna go off?
Lost has the tick, tick, tick. They can't find the ticking. Did you not see Lost? Oh boy,
it was 24. Are you talking about 24? Was it 24?
No, yeah. Well, that is at the end of. They have it in 24, but I think it was Lost, which upset a lot of people. They're like trying to find the source of the ticking.
That
I can tell you more about
me.
the history of clocks than I can about modern pop culture references with clocks.
It's okay,
and that
let's
tells
keep
you
going.
a lot about me as a person.
I was reminded just now of the ticking noise, Harry Potter Puppet Pals. But
What? I don't even know what that is.
You haven't seen? Okay, well we'll send
the
you
real
this.
ones will know.
We'll send you this link afterwards.
Okay.
That was amazing. Okay.
Anyway.
Well, I just want to say, like, even in the, whether it's a clock or even in the countdown, or even in the reference of, I'm getting so ahead of myself today. Even
Because
in the
it's
reference
late
of
and
a
we're so excited.
what I meant to say was it still is a countdown, or it's typically like
Right.
in both of those references, you're thinking about time
Is passing, usually to some sort of end goal.
Yeah, and seeing as this was our first hint as to this album, it's really apt that she included these ticking noises.
But also, what it's ending in is love bombs, which, like, love bombing is emotional abuse. It's manipulation it's manipulating you through these grand gestures that make you think that they love you, but it's manipulation.
And Jody, you said these are the 3 evidences. I would like to say this is 4. The 4th evidence.
Yeah, you're right. It's 4.
Yeah.
And the veins might be the 5th. So I think this is all evidence. So
it's a whole list of things. Yeah, you're right.
I will say, I mean, a bomb. I mean, a bomb would probably kill you. But you talk about my muses acquire like bruises, and then 2 lines later we get love bombs. Like those again. It's just all violent
painful
imagery.
Things. Very violent.
The coat
so
of
it's
arms,
crime.
like, you have a shield up, but when you get hit, you're still gonna bruise. You're still gonna get hurt. You might break an arm. Like it might prevent the death blow, but it's not gonna prevent injury.
The imagery you have here is crime, battle, physical violence, and destruction.
Yeah, which is very like a far cry from the image we were just talking about, which was very
cover image.
Well, it was
peaceful.
vulnerable. It was still a vulnerable, sensuous image. We don't really know. We can't see her eyes, which really tell you what someone is feeling.
Right.
And then finally, the last line. Well, my veins of pitch black ink. This gave such Dorothy Parker. I mean, the whole poem gave Dorothy Parker vibes for me, which I felt very validated. That the Substack that I wrote in, I don't even know when it was. I think it was early January. I was like, oh, how random. I'm like, are there any like similarities between Dorothy Parker and Taylor Swift? And I wrote this whole thing. And this is giving Dorothy Parker, like the tortured poet. Hello. I mean, they're all tortured. But it's particularly my veins of pitch black ink. Like she is a writer. It is in her blood.
It also feels, everything else has felt kind of like her on the defense, and then this last line, it feels like we're going on the offense. It's giving draw the cat eye sharp enough to kill a man.
She's
It's
got some
very
control here.
ominous. It's very like stark of like, here's all these things. And you know what else I had when I had these love bombs? I had veins of pitch black ink, and that's like, I don't know,
That's
okay.
my weapon.
It's
That is
really
her
interesting. It's interesting because she's not talking about the blood.
No.
She's not saying that this is my blood, which is pitch black ink. She's not bleeding here. She's talking about her veins,
It's in
which
me.
is in her. Right, exactly. So she's saying that I'm entering something that is in me. The pitch black ink, which is just runs throughout my body, pumps up my heart, makes everything work. That's evidence. And I think that is, again, like the word choice matters. And it's really interesting because pitch black ink conjures a very different image by itself, but then veins conjures a different image. And it kind of takes you in a different direction.
Yeah, because if she had said I'm bleeding pitch black ink, it would mean she was cut.
Right.
She is whole here.
And
it is just running
again,
through her.
it's this like messing with your head kind of thing, because in all of these things, like the tick, 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 I thought it was a clock. I found out it's a love bond. With the pitch black ink, which is the thing that stands out to me, I get immediately this imagery of like flowing liquid ink, but then it's contained. It's contained in these veins, which are inside of her. Even with the coat of arms, it's tarnished. Like a coat of arms is supposed to be like a strong kind of material, but maybe it's a precious metal. And then with her muses, like you think it's females that she's acquired like bruises, but then it's like, oh wait, is she talking about the men in her life? So every single thing that she's written here is almost like it's like messing with your head. It's not actually what you initially think it is.
Okay,
We're never going to
things,
recover from this album.
No, we will be able to do this podcast forever. Speaking of things that you're not initially expecting, all's fair in love and poetry. The proverb is all's fair in love and war, which is first seen in John Lyly's novel Euphues, The Anatomy of Wit, in 1578. So that's for our medievalist, our resident medievalist.
So
yes, that'd be kind of early modern. So he was like not that. So
What
he
do
was
I know?
around. No, you know plenty. That's just that. I had a wonderful early modern professor who scared the crap out of me. So that was a sheer instinct from being in his class.
You were like, not right.
Like, no. Well, I think this is early modern. But like he was around, like not far off from like Shakespeare's time, to give you an idea.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So the phrase all's fair in love and war describes a situation where people do not follow the usual rules of behavior and do things that are normally considered unfair. And it is often used to justify cheating.
Yeah. I mean, well, one thing that we were just talking about is how the whole first part of the poem was like kind of violent.
Yeah.
And so coat of arms like is a direct reference to war, and there are clearly some references to war with bombs, and bruises is a violent term. Even pitch black ink. I mean,
the whole thing is dark and broody, the whole thing is and violent.
And so the fact that the word war is the one that is
omitted
and
replaced with poetry.
Right.
I almost feel like it's not even omitted. Like it is technically omitted, but the way you're reading this, I feel like
it's implied.
I think it's saying poetry is war.
Yeah,
it
is like deliberately substituted. Right, that is a better explanation.
Right.
It is
like it's
deliberately
omitted,
swapped.
but not. Like the meaning is still there.
Exactly. It's deliberately substituted with poetry, but that is serving a purpose. Therefore, poetry is war. Now, what that changes to the tortured poets department, meaning because you have poets who write poetry, and maybe they are people who wage war or violence.
I wonder if it puts love and poetry in conflict with each other. Like in the initial proverb, it puts love and war in conflict with each other. Like those are the opposites that you're kind of comparing. And here, like, are love and poetry depicted as opposites?
I see your point. I don't I feel
see
Love
them
and War
conflicting.
is saying I don't
Yeah.
see them conflicting. I see
Same.
the original saying Love and War are the same. They are both
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
they're the two most intense experiences a human can have
okay.
that can both end in the most destruction a human can feel.
Got it.
Yeah. And
And
that's
so
why
we see
all
them
is
as separate.
fair.
Yeah.
Right. I kind of agree with that. I don't necessarily see them as opposites, but
But they are
I
like
think
they're
what I'm
polar
saying is
ends
that
of the spectrum.
That's what I think I'm saying is like, here are two things that you don't normally associate with one another, love and war, and yet they are the same. And but
they have similarities.
They have similarities here. Are we saying here that love and poetry are opposite ends of the spectrum?
So
Maybe.
if we were saying this out of context, I'd have a really different view of this. But what I think is interesting is knowing, first of all, we know Taylor writes songs that aren't about breakups. We know that.
Right.
We've discussed them. Fans know this. However, this entire thing is she has evidence of defending herself. And so what's interesting to me is it's starting to feel to me like it's a defense of her public persona, a defense of her art. And so if we think of it that way, her poetry is often perceived as breakup poetry, and in that case it is kind of on two ends of the spectrum. You have love on one end, and then you have breakup and heartbreak and misery and cheating and
sad songs,
whatever, and
how
sad
long
songs.
can we be a sad song till we were too
like,
far gone to
without
come back
Taylor
to life?
I would read it differently, but knowing the context of the accusations made towards her, I do think that is a possible way to see it.
But I also think the fact that she is likening poetry to violence potentially and war is important, because she's saying all is fair in love, and maybe it's her poetry, but I think it's like in this situation, like I think it's both. Like, I think she is doing both. She's doing what you're saying, Jen, which is like a little bit of defense of like the reason that she writes these. I mean, people say like All Too Well was a vicious takedown of a song, or like she's written some songs that people are like, that is just absolute savage. That is just absolute, like it's annihilating.
It's emotion.
It's annihilating this person's character. It's character assassination. I mean, the one that just came out, like the 1989 Volt tracks, the people were like, oh my God. And she's kind of saying like all is fair in
exactly. If you're going to do
poetry,
something, I can write about it.
But also it's specifically implying that I have been mistreated. Like maybe there was violence.
Why is my coat of arms tarnished? Why have I had bruises? Okay.
Yeah, I love the ending of All's Fair in Love and Poetry, because we have this defense and we're like, hey, there was violence on both sides. But also it's almost like it feels a little flippant to me at the end of like, everything was violent. But hey, it's a don't hate the player, don't hate the game, or whatever that.
We love the player, I love the game. It's
whatever. But anyway. It's kind of, it's kind of that just casual, like, hey, but like this is the way the world works. This is This is actually very reputation coded, as I'm thinking, I did something bad, like best of times, worst of crimes.
Okay, can we get to the end so that we can move on to the thing that she dropped before we started this? Because I haven't even fully read it yet, and I'm itching. I'm like, ugh.
So I only had one more comment about this page. So
great. Sincerely, the chairman of the Tortured Poets Department. I have many comments, so go ahead.
So chairman is gendered male. And in fact,
like
we now
man.
Well, people more and more shorten it to chair. Like when you think about like universities, it's the chair of the English department, because it has been moved to a gender neutral, because people of different genders will hold that role. So the intentional choice of chairman is really fascinating to me. It's giving the man, it's giving I'm in the top office, it's giving I don't care what my gender is, I'm going to take the same stance as a man would in this moment. So like, come at me. And I love it.
Yeah.
I see that as if there's a chairman of a department, especially the poets department, are there other professors? Like, who else is part of this department?
Yeah.
Which starts to lead me to what she just dropped today, which also makes me a little nervous that between the time we record this and the time we release it, she's going to release more shit. So just know that we're recording this Monday night. Just timestamp Monday night, 9:24 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. From here on in, I shoot without a script. See, more red. Anyway.
but like, I do want to say, like, just if we're substituting poetry for like kind of violence, I think the point was like, who are these poets? And to Jody's point, like, who are who are the people in this department and who are the tortured poets? And I'm almost like, are the tortured poets other people who have had similar experiences? Are they other people who have been like victims of this kind of violence, or are they the perpetrators, like the people doing the violence? Like, because poets write poetry, and I just think it's really interesting that like poets are the creators of poetry. And so I think, I don't have the answer, but I think that's really interesting.
It's also funny to me because if you ever, like, out of any context refer, like, oh, like the chair of the English department, or like, oh, the English department, like professors, on one hand, I'm like, oh, sometimes they collaborate. And on the other hand, I'm like, I've seen them kind of scream at each other over sort of inconsequential things. So this could go both ways on what it means to be in a department together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, back cover.
Okay, let's move to the back cover.
Okay, so I just had to take a screenshot and like zoom in because Taylor, we're old. Okay, so this looks like it's from the disc because there's side A, B, C, and D. Am I reading these out, or are we just going through them?
Should we start with the "I love you"? It's ruining my life.
Yeah, my life.
We should start there.
I love you. Ain't that the worst thing you've ever heard?
There's a comma, and then the form makes a return here. It's ruining my life.
My life. Right. There's a lot of drama. There's like drama and like in that pause. I love you.
There is a heavy pause like, between it's and ruining.
Ruining. Yeah. Because if you can cover up one side of it, I love you, it's my life. But then if you
I love that.
Move it, you're like, and
oh, that's so good.
Thank you.
So good.
Thank you. Okay. Ready? Fortnite featuring Post Malone.
Oh man, I just thought about the video game. My brain took a second to get away from like, did you just write a song about the video game?
Who knows? And then
it's not the same way.
Oh, that's true. Oh, so like in a fortnight. That means 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, that's 2 weeks. Cool. That is the word that we need to take from the British, because when you say bi-weekly, it could mean twice a week or every other week.
Yes, I so agree.
Let's use it. Anyways.
Interesting that you say that. We'll get to the other song. The Tortured Poets Department is track 2. Ooh, this means we have to see what track 5 is. Track 3 is My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys. Ooh, the use of boy and toys.
This is why we can't have
so good there. Track 4 is Down Bad, which is giving Reputation.
Guys. Oh my God.
Down Bad.
Ready for track 5? Are you ready for the title of track 5?
No, I'm not. I just read it.
So Long London, which is really heartbreaking for me, just on a personal note, because London's my favorite, and I hope this doesn't ruin London for me. Anyway, track 6, But Daddy, I Love Him. She doesn't often sing about her dad.
And no comma in But Daddy.
Yeah. I noticed that too.
Okay, wait. Track 7, Fresh Out the Slammer.
Girl, what is this album?
Florida!
This is like the most you guys, listeners, we have not read this yet. We are all hearing these for the very first time right now.
Florida, 3 exclamation points featuring Florence and the Machine.
Really excited
I will be
for
in
Florida
when this album drops, so that's fun.
Exclamation points. Okay, side C.
9.
First of all, I was going to say, like, does she do side C's and D's in the past? Has she done that? Because it's just an A and B.
I don't know.
Right? Like, usually there's just a side A and B, right?
File
like,
name the manuscript. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Track 9, that's Guilty as Sin, right? The punctuation. I cannot wait to
the
just
punctuation
get into
is...
Yeah. More punctuation. Track 10, Who's Afraid of Little Old Me? Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which maybe we're going to have to do a Virginia Woolf episode for that song.
Also, Who's Afraid of Little You? Every man with a weak ego. That's Who's Afraid of You. Taylor.
I can fix him. No, really, I can.
In parentheses.
Oh, that one's going to hurt.
I don't know what number we're up to, but LOML, which is Love of My Life.
Oh my God, I read that as 10 milliliters.
You're not even like in the medical or science field, which is very interesting.
Like,
that's your interpretation.
10 milliliters.
LOML, Love of My Life. Is that millennial? Anyway.
I don't think I could have told you that was love of my life.
Yeah, I would
You're
not have
welcome.
guessed that.
I'm
value
very glad
that
you're here.
you
Mine
and the
would have
medieval-
been knee deep in a 10 milliliter analysis.
You
without
two have advanced degrees in English, and I'm telling you the abbreviations. The abbreviations.
My second guess would have been like laughing out my lungs or something. Would have been
That's
like,
track
what is
12.
LOML?
Track 13 is I Can Do It With a Broken Heart.
Oof.
Track 14, holy shit, The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived.
Ooh.
I think that's going to be the best one. That's going to be a takedown.
Oh my gosh.
15 is The Alchemy.
Oh, I'm so excited about alchemy because alchemy, we can say something about. Alchemy is turning things into gold.
We can't say, like, Gold Rush. We can't say
Well,
something.
It's
about
also
anything else.
scientific, so maybe it's 10 milliliters of something to turn into gold.
But like gold or the elixir of life, but alchemy was really like turning elements into something really, really precious. So maybe that's a turning point.
Oh my god. I keep counting. I keep going back to track 5 and counting to make sure I have these numbers right. But the next one is Clara Bow.
Weird.
Interesting.
I said a name? We're going to
They're
Google that.
both
And then
capitalized, which I guess she is doing all caps for these titles. So
we're going to
that's
have
not
to Google
useful.
that. Can somebody Google that? And
Sure.
the bonus track is the manuscript.
Which is the name of this file.
The file, yeah. Clara Bow. Oh my god. So I'm...
Clara Bow is an American actress from the year 1905 to 1965, born in Brooklyn, New York. Was known as the It Girl and went from the silent film era to transition to talkies in 1929.
Oh, it's very Singing in the Rain.
I saw someone have a tweet about how talkies, they were like, I used to think talkies were the stupidest name, but then for the first time in my life, I was forced to seriously consider the word movie. And I think about that all the time.
Oh, because it's like moving.
It's a moving picture. So I was like, well, talkies are stupid, but we say movie all the time. And it's the same format.
Oh, that broke my brain.
And then it's From the Desk of Taylor Swift.
What do we think Clara Bow has to do?
I mean, it's giving Rebecca Harkness vibes.
Okay, wait. The tweets or the X's. First of all, terrible rebrand. Don't mind me. I'm going to watch as many Clara Bow movies as I possibly can between now and April 19th. It's Clara Bow season.
Taylor just invested in Clara Bow's like
complete collection.
Yeah, that's what I can think of. And she's just out here just like, yeah, let's make that investment go up. That would be brilliant, honestly.
Okay, so one thing that I think is really interesting is that from the desk of Taylor Swift, which it says that here, it doesn't say the chairman,
right?
Which is what I am seeing in other places. So I think that's interesting that there's no title. And so I do have this open question of whether Taylor Swift is the chairman or not.
Or did she create a character?
What if our boy Jack is the chairman?
Our boy Jack. It is trademark.
There is a lot of it that is kind of Reputation feeling to me, and we know she sort of created a bit of a character for Reputation, and we got some character songs and we got some like kind of sincere songs. I wonder if the chairman and Taylor Swift are two sides of Taylor in this album, that we'll have chairman songs like The Smallest Man I've ever seen, and we'll have some like Taylor Swift songs that is like Down Bad or something. I don't know, but like that could be.
Yeah, I think like in our normal speaker analysis, we're always like, who is the speaker? And I think in this question, like there is a question of like, who is Taylor in this album? What's her role? Is she the chairman? Is she somebody else? Is she like the principal? Like, I don't know.
This is where I feel like being true to our podcast, it's very hard for us to like make any further inferences based on just the titles alone. Also, Jen, I can see the reflection of the cover in the window behind you, and I'm like, oh, you really blew that up big to see that.
Yeah, I have my Instagram pulled up on my desktop.
I still can't see
I have it on
very
my
well.
phone, and I had to screenshot it and zoom it in. Taylor, I had said after staying up last night to watch the Grammys, I did a TikTok that didn't do well, but I was like, I need Taylor to be in her like go to bed early so she can wake up refreshed to get to class
Need
era,
her-
because I cannot with the midnights. And someone commented, we need Taylor in her 9 to 5 era, and I was like, yes. Yes.
Where you
Taylor.
guys all need to move to the West Coast.
No, that is the only thing I liked about the West Coast, is that the award shows were done by 8 o'clock. Anyway,
Can we talk about this image a little bit, because
I was just
were
gonna say I want to
skipped
talk about
that.
the image.
yeah,
she looks like
the-
she has a headache.
you don't have the black and white contrast here. Everything
it's
is
more
kind of
yeah.
grayscale.
It feels like
I
the type of image that would not get graded well if you handed this in for a photography project. Your teacher would be like, it's out of focus. You don't have enough contrast. Like, try again.
Well, I do see what
Sorry.
you're saying. No, you're good. My brain is like listening to you and then also processing the next thing. This is all like the most like
It
in the
is
moment
late.
we've ever been.
It is-
This is gonna be a real.
Welcome.
We are being as vulnerable as Taylor is being in these pictures.
Welcome.
But so in the first image on the cover, she's wearing a top, but the straps are down. So what's interesting in the second cover, and we talked about how the first one was like very vulnerable, very intimate, very open. She's covering her arms, but her body's out. She's not hiding. And yet in the second one, there's obviously, we see more of her face. She's clearly upset, but she could either be, we don't know what she's wearing. We see no clothing at the top, but because of the way the straps are in the first one, this could be like, before and after, kind of a thing. Like this could be from the same, it was from the same photo shoot, I assume, but though aesthetically and the way the things are set up, these could be the same moment, but they're very, very different emotions and body language.
To me, if the first cover image was like a painting, which is kind of what I was reminded of like a woman laying out on a bed, like some sort of like art painting, this one feels very much like a sculpture. It kind of has like a porcelain quality to it.
It's
I'm
almost
thinking
like
of
that
like
thinker pose,
the
a little
thinker.
bit.
Oh, yeah.
Or like it's all kind of one color. Like even her hair is like a similar color to her skin. She's usually known for the bright red lip, and here it's not like that much of a contrast. Her nails also seem to be in like some sort of a neutral color. Everything is kind of one shade, but the light is still there. The light is reflecting on it, and it just feels like she's like carved out of marble or something, like it feels very statue-like.
The lighting is coming from behind her too. So in the first one, the lighting is coming over her body. She's open to it. She's open to the daylight. And in this one, her back is turned away from the light. She's looking not towards it. It's just
And of
on
course,
her
so
shoulder.
we have the text that says it's ruining my life. So she's not in a
I
happy
love you,
mood.
and it's ruining my life. Oh
Yeah.
my God, Taylor.
It's also interesting. It's not I love
am
you,
broken.
you're ruining my life. It's I love you, it's ruining my life. The
ruining my
love
life.
is what's
Ooh.
ruining her life.
Yeah.
And
Definitely a tortured poet if I ever saw one.
Yeah.
do you?
Great
I don't
quick
even-
conversation, you guys. We were
I
like,
don't-
we'll just
yeah,
do
we
a
were like,
quick
we'll get through this
chat.
quickly. An hour later.
Well, we didn't expect new content.
No,
that's
that
true.
came out literally as
We were hitting
like,
record and we were like, well, we'll
Oh,
look
shit,
at this.
oh,
I
shit.
guess.
Okay, well, that was fun.
Oh my God.
It's fun. We haven't gotten to do a lot of visual stuff with her. That's fun to get to talk about this. And I'm super excited. We need to like revisit this when the album comes out to discuss how
will.
wrong we
Wait.
were in every single thing we said.
Yo, one more revelation.
Yo.
Yes, I'm ready.
Sorry. Because
Lay it on
I closed out the image on my Instagram, and now I'm seeing both images side by side. It's like a textbook cover.
Stop.
It's a book jacket.
Oh, you're right. I see it.
It's like there's a back cover, I love you, it's ruining my life. Then there's the middle spine of the book, and then the other one is like the front.
It's a manuscript. It
It's
literally
a manuscript.
says
It says it's a manuscript. That's right.
file
For
name
idiots.
in the manuscript. Genius.
Now I'm done.
So now you're done. Okay, so what I wanted to say was a lot of the things on social were like, oh, like people pulling out their dictionaries, like, oh shit, I'm really gonna need to like get an English degree in order to understand this album. Hi, we are here to help you.
I did it for you. I got the degree.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what matters.
Jen got her master's and potentially on her way to her PhD.
I'm working on the masters.
Monty's working
We
on the
will
masters.
share I'll share my knowledge, but
Yeah.
not in a way where if someone misidentifies the early modern era, your instincts kick in and you have to correct them out of still fear 10 years later.
Not the way that
Fun
you will
version.
be a
He was
tortured
actually-
poet.
He was a wonderful professor, but he just really terrified me.
They really just like ingrain these things into you, and that's how you learn, so that you never make that mistake again. Anyway, nothing was triggering in that experience. We are here for you. We are here to help you. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, hi, welcome. It's not usually this unhinged, but we do go. Okay, maybe it is usually this unhinged. But what we typically do is we do a show and tell episode where we pick a theme like eco-criticism or Marxist theory or metaphors or Pride and Prejudice, and each of us picks a song that we think relates to that theme, and we talk about it within that context. And then the following week we pick one of those songs to deep dive, and we go kind of 1, 2, or 10 layers deeper depending upon the song. So go back and listen to some of our previous episodes that may, help inspire you, whether it be eco-criticism, which we talk about the lake poets, or we have an episode on metaphor. I believe that's episode 13. In our mastermind episode 20 is where we talk about muses and the Odyssey. And then we have a couple of upcoming episodes this spring. I think Shakespeare will be a good one. Poetry, and then that's in April, and then poetic repetition. That's in March. Any others you guys think that will help
I
our
just think
listeners?
we've had so much fun with all of the themes.
do.
I know.
This,
We love
this
it.
year. So
It's great.
Pride and Prejudice. We have a Pride and Prejudice episode coming out end of this month. If you want to like tiptoe back into more of the world of like English grad school, college, Pride and Prejudice is a great entry. It's super accessible. Like it's, it'll stretch you a little bit, but it's not Shakespeare. It's very accessible. It's very fun. I enjoyed it more as an adult than I did when I was in high school. So check it out. And then that might be one of my favorite conversations we had. We just got so into that.
I say that about every conversation.
I know. Well, the other thing is that we do try to mix it up. So sometimes we'll do works of literature. Sometimes we'll do different kinds of literary theory. Sometimes we'll just do like rhetoric techniques, like metaphor, for example. So we kind of try to mix it up and pick different kinds of themes. Just to keep things interesting.
Yeah.
So,
and if you want to learn more, check out all the other episodes. You follow us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube at AP Taylor Swift. We have a bookshop, bookshop.org/shop/APTS, where we link all of our, referenced books because we go on tangents. And then I love our Substack. I think we talked about that earlier. Substack.com/subscribes. I don't know. We'll put it in show notes. It's late. My brain isn't working, but we like to go a lot deeper. What was last week? Was last week the fates on your whole dissertation on?
Yes,
fates?
I did the fates. I talked about the fates last week.
That was fun. Yeah. So
the origins of the fates. Yeah.
Origin of the fates. Yeah. So that's all we have for you tonight. If Taylor drops anything more about this album between Monday evening and when we release this, I'm sorry, but follow us on social and maybe we'll say something about it because otherwise we're not going to get back. We have day jobs and I don't know if we're going to be able to do them if she keeps doing this to us. That's all we have for you on this episode of AP Taylor Swift. If I can, no, my music doesn't want to work. See, this is... Okay.
We usually do edit our episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, we usually edit our episodes. This ain't it. There we go.
We're excited.
There we go. There's our outro music. Thanks for joining us. Tune in next time as we overanalyze more of Taylor Swift's discography on AP Taylor Swift.